My dear friends, today's tale isn't just another life story. It's a journey into the depths of history. It's a saga of power, ambition, and destiny. And it's about no ordinary man, but one of the greatest warriors, kings, and leaders to ever walk the earth. Imagine someone who, before turning 30, had conquered almost the entire known world. A man who never lost a single battle, whose name still echoes through the centuries, more than 2,000 years later. A man who fought like a lion, ruled like a god, and inspired millions long after his death. That man was Alexander the Great. This isn't just a story. It's an experience, a lesson in courage, wisdom, and leadership. His life was an unending stream of danger, adventure, love, war, and victory. And as we follow his journey, you'll not only feel the thrill of history, but also sharpen your English and find new motivation along the way. Alexander's story begins in 356 BC, in the city of Pella, the capital of Macedonia, what is now northern Greece. But his birth was no ordinary event. It was wrapped in mystery, legends, and prophecies. His father, King Philip II of Macedonia, was a powerful and determined ruler. He had transformed Macedonia from a fragile kingdom into a formidable military force. But he wanted more than just a son. He wanted an heir destined to rule the world. His mother, Olympias, was known for a fiery spirit and deep belief in the divine. She was convinced her child was chosen for greatness. On the night before Alexander was born, strange omens appeared. Olympias dreamed that a thunderbolt struck her womb, setting ablaze, a sign, many believed, that her son would be powerful like a god. Philip, too, had a vision. He saw himself sealing his wife's womb with the image of a lion. Priests interpreted it as a prophecy. The boy would be fearless and destined to rule. On the very day Alexander came into the world, the great temple of Artemis in Ephesus burned down. People whispered that this was no coincidence. A mighty force had just entered the world. From the moment Alexander could walk, his training began. While other children played with wooden toys, he held real swords and shields. His mother reminded him daily, "You are not like other children. You are meant to rule." Philip wanted his son to be more than a warrior. He wanted him to be the wisest man alive. He brought in the finest tutors, and eventually, Alexander's education was entrusted to the greatest teacher of the age, Aristotle. For 3 years, the philosopher taught him everything: science, philosophy, politics, literature, and the art of war. He introduced him to the legendary heroes of the past, especially Achilles from the Trojan War. Alexander became fascinated with Achilles, keeping a copy of Homer's Iliad with him wherever he went. But the greatest lesson Aristotle gave was this: a true king does not simply rule over land. He rules over hearts. A true leader does not only win battles. He builds a new world. These words would shape Alexander's destiny. He dreamed not only of kingship, but becoming almost godlike among men. One story from his youth became legendary: the taming of Bucephalus, the wild stallion. A horse trader brought a massive black horse to Philip. The beast was strong but uncontrollable, throwing off every rider. Philip was ready to send it away when 12-year-old Alexander stepped forward. The crowd laughed. How could a boy succeed where grown men failed? But Alexander noticed something they didn't. The horse was afraid of its own shadow. He turned the stallion toward the sun so it couldn't see the shadow, calmed it gently, and then leapt onto its back, riding with perfect control. Philip was astonished. Hugging his son, he said, "Macedonia is too small for you. You must find a kingdom worthy of your greatness." By 16, Alexander was no longer just a student. He was a commander in his father's army. Philip faced constant threats, and Alexander led soldiers into battle with unmatched skill. While others relied on brute strength, he outwitted enemies with strategy and foresight. His men admired him deeply, not merely as a prince, but as a leader who could guide them to victory. Then, at just 20 years old, tragedy struck. Philip was assassinated. The killer's identity was never confirmed, though whispers pointed to Olympias herself, eager for her son to take the throne. Suddenly, Alexander was king, but he faced a choice: remain in Macedonia and rule a small kingdom, or take his army and claim the world. His decision was instant. He would take the world. The moment his father died, chaos threatened Macedonia. Rivals doubted the young king's strength. Some of Philip's closest generals, powerful nobles, and neighboring kingdoms prepared to attack, hoping to crush the royal family. But they had underestimated him. Alexander wasn't an ordinary king. He was a force that would change the course of history forever. Within just a few days, Alexander secured control over Macedonia and boldly declared himself its king. He made it clear from the very start that rebellion would not be tolerated. His first obstacle came from within. Some nobles, including high-ranking generals, refused to acknowledge his rule. Acting swiftly, Alexander crushed any potential resistance, hunting down and executing all who opposed him, even those who had loyally served his father for years. His message was unmistakable. Betrayal would be met with death. But the gravest threat arose from the city of Thebes, one of the strongest powers in Greece. After Philip's death, the Thebans saw their chance to break free from Macedonian control. They rallied a massive army and declared war, confident that the young and inexperienced king would falter. They could not have been more wrong. Before they could make a move, Alexander led his forces straight to their gates. The people of Thebes mocked his arrival, believing they could crush him with ease, until he struck with lightning speed. Using flawless strategy and sheer force, he shattered their defenses, broke through the city walls, and within hours Thebes was engulfed in flames. Alexander then gave the final, devastating command: erase Thebes from existence. Thousands were slain, their homes reduced to ashes, and the city was wiped from a map. This brutal act sent a chilling warning across Greece: defy me, and you will vanish from history. The impact was immediate. Athens, Sparta, and every other major city surrendered without a fight. Alexander was no longer just a king. He was a force none dared to challenge. With Greece firmly under his command, he turned toward his true ambition, world conquest. His first target was the Persian Empire, the most formidable power of the age. For centuries, Persia had ruled vast territories spanning Asia, Egypt, and parts of Europe. Its ruler, King Darius III, commanded millions and possessed an army so immense that no one had ever dared confront it. But Alexander saw opportunity. Persia was wealthy, powerful, and overflowing with resources. If he could claim it, he would secure his place as the greatest ruler in history. He assembled an army of just 35,000 men and prepared to set sail for Persia. Before departing, he made a shocking move. He burned his own ships. His men, bewildered, asked why he would destroy their way home. Alexander's answer was simple: we have two choices: conquer Persia and return as kings, or die here. With their escape gone, the army had no choice but to win. Their first encounter with the Persians came at the Granicus River, where 40,000 enemy soldiers stood waiting on the opposite bank. Alexander's generals urged caution, suggesting they wait. But Alexander only laughed. "I don't wait, I win," he declared. Charging directly into the river with full force, he caught the Persians off guard. The battle was savage. Steel clashed, blood flowed, and Alexander himself fought at the front, his warhorse Bucephalus carrying him through the enemy ranks like a tempest. Persian generals targeted him, but his speed and ferocity were unmatched. By the time the fighting ended, Persia had lost 10,000 men, while Alexander's losses numbered fewer than 400. With the victory at Granicus, city after city fell under his control. News of his triumph reached Darius, who was enraged. Determined to crush this upstart, the Persian king began assembling the largest army the empire had ever fielded, over 250,000 soldiers. But Alexander, instead of marching directly toward him, turned south toward Egypt. Egypt, though rich and strategically vital, had long despised Persian rule. The Egyptians welcomed Alexander as a liberator, even crowning him pharaoh in Memphis. Seeking to strengthen his divine image, Alexander visited the oracle of Siwa deep in the desert, where priests proclaimed him the son of Zeus, chosen by the gods themselves. This only fueled his conviction that his destiny was to rule the world. By 331 BC, the time had come to face Darius. The two armies met at Gaugamela, a vast plain perfectly suited for Persian numbers. Darius's army stretched beyond sight. 250,000 soldiers wore elephants, deadly chariots with spinning blades, and heavily armed infantry. Alexander had just 47,000 men, but he held an advantage Persia could not match: brilliance. Darius was confident his overwhelming force would crush the Macedonians. But Alexander devised a masterstroke. He maneuvered his army to the right, luring the Persians into breaking their formation. The moment he saw a gap, Alexander charged straight at Darius. The sight of the young king bearing down on him sent the Persian ruler into panic. Darius turned and fled, abandoning his army. Without their king, the Persian forces collapsed. Thousands were slain, and the rest surrendered. The greatest empire in the ancient world had been broken, and Alexander's march into history was unstoppable. Alexander became the master of the Persian Empire, seizing its greatest cities, Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis. In Persepolis, the jewel of Persia, he made a dramatic and ruthless statement. He set the grand palace of the Persian kings ablaze. Flames lit up the sky, signaling that the mighty Persian Empire was gone forever. His victory at the Battle of Gaugamela marked the height of his power. Persia had fallen, and the young Macedonian now ruled the greatest empire the world had ever known. Yet for Alexander, conquest was far from over. He dreamed of extending his dominion to the very edges of the known world. But with power came enemies, not only across battlefields, but also among those closest to him. Years after Gaugamela, Darius III of Persia fled east, hoping to rally new armies and reclaim his throne. His own generals, however, abandoned him, seeing Persia's fate as sealed. One of them, Bessus, betrayed him, binding him in chains and leaving him to die in isolation. By the time Alexander reached Darius, the king was already dead. Alexander had hoped to capture him alive to prove his superiority, but instead he found only a broken figure. To honor the fallen ruler, he ordered a royal burial and declared himself Persia's new king of kings. Now ruling over both Greece and Persia, Alexander faced the challenge of uniting two vastly different worlds. While his Macedonian and Greek soldiers still saw Persians as enemies, Alexander envisioned a fusion of East and West. He began wearing Persian royal robes, adopting court traditions like proskynesis, bowing before the king, and even married a Persian princess, Roxana, to symbolize unity. These changes angered his Greek soldiers, who felt their leader was abandoning his roots. One of his closest friends and generals, Clitus the Black, confronted him, accusing him of forgetting he was Macedonian. During a drunken quarrel, Alexander's rage boiled over. He seized a spear and killed Clitus, the very man who had once saved his life. When the fury passed, he was overcome with regret. This moment revealed the dangerous transformation in him. No longer just a warrior, but a ruler weighed down by the intoxicating grip of absolute power. His paranoia deepened. When a plot to assassinate him was uncovered, one of the accused was Philotas, the son of Parmenion, Alexander's most trusted general. Despite Philotas's denials, Alexander ordered him tortured and executed. Fearing Parmenion might seek revenge, Alexander made the cold decision to have him killed as well, without evidence of guilt. It was a brutal move that shocked the army. Still unsatisfied, Alexander turned his gaze toward India. In 326 BC, he crossed into the subcontinent and faced his most formidable opponent yet, King Porus, who rode into battle with war elephants towering over the field. The sight terrified even Alexander's seasoned soldiers. But as always, he relied on cunning strategy, avoiding a direct clash with the elephants and instead outmaneuvering Porus's forces. After a grueling fight, Alexander triumphed. When he asked Porus how he wished to be treated, the king answered, "Like a king." Admiring his courage, Alexander spared him and made him an ally. This victory opened the way for further conquests. Yet his men had reached their limit. Exhausted after years of marching thousands of miles and enduring countless battles, they refused to go further east. For the first time, Alexander's was defied. No speech, no promise of glory could move them. Reluctantly, he turned back. The journey home was devastating. His army crossed the unforgiving deserts of Persia, where many perished from thirst and hunger. When Alexander finally returned to Babylon in 323 BC, he was a shadow of a man who had once set out to conquer the world. His body bore the toll of endless campaigns, and his mind was restless, haunted by the knowledge that his dream of ruling the entire world was unfulfilled. Not long after, he fell gravely ill. For days he lay silent, surrounded by his generals. When asked who should succeed him, legend says he whispered, "To the strongest." On June 10th, 323 BC, at the age of just 32, Alexander the Great breathed his last. His death sent shockwaves across the world. With no clear heir, his empire descended into chaos, tore apart by the ambitions of his most powerful commanders. Yet, though his life ended abruptly, the mark he left on history never faded. His name would echo for centuries, as a conqueror who had come closer than any other to ruling the world. After Alexander the Great's death, his most trusted generals, known in Greek as the Didakai, meaning successors, at first pretended to rule together. But beneath the surface, each one secretly longed for absolute power. Before long, unity gave way to ambition, and the empire splintered into rival factions. Brutal wars raged for years, and eventually the empire was carved into 4 great kingdoms. Ptolemy claimed Egypt, found in the Ptolemaic dynasty that endured for 3 centuries. Seleucus took Persia and part of India, creating the Seleucid Empire. Antigonus gained control over Greece and Macedonia, though his rule was short-lived. Lysimachus took control of Asia Minor, but his reign also did not last. Alexander's dream of a single, united empire had died with him, yet his influence continued to shape the world. Even divided, the territories he conquered shared a common legacy, his vision of spreading Greek culture far beyond its homeland. This period came to be known as the Hellenistic Age, a time when Greek language, customs, and ideas blended with the traditions of other civilizations. One of his most lasting achievements was turning Greek into a global language. Before his conquest, it was spoken mainly in Greece, but afterward it became the international tongue for trade, politics, and scholarship. It was so enduring that centuries later, the New Testament of the Bible was written in Greek. Alexander also founded new cities, with Alexandria in Egypt becoming the most famous. It grew into the intellectual and cultural heart of the ancient world, home to the great library of Alexandria, where scholars from every corner of the known world study philosophy, science, medicine, and literature. The uniting of East and West under his empire encouraged breakthroughs in science and mathematics. Thinkers like Archimedes, Euclid, and Hipparchus made discoveries whose influence is still felt today. Euclid's work, for example, remains the basis of modern geometry. Greek art and architecture flourished across the vast territories, influencing even Buddhist sculpture in India through the Gandhara style. Alexander did not demand that people abandon their own traditions. Instead, he shared Greek ideas alongside them, creating a unique cultural fusion. His life and achievements inspired many who came after. Julius Caesar of Rome once wept when he saw a statue of Alexander, lamenting that at his age Alexander had conquered the world, while he had done nothing. Caesar later drew on Alexander's military strategies in his own campaigns. Napoleon Bonaparte admired him as the greatest general in history, adopting his tactics to win his own wars. Even today, military academies, such as West Point in the United States and Sandhurst in the United Kingdom, study Alexander's campaigns. But Alexander's legacy is not without controversy. To some, he was a hero, a commander who never lost a battle, spread learning and culture across continents, respected defeated leaders such as King Porus of India, and dreamed of uniting East and West through alliances and marriages. To others, he was ruthless, a conqueror responsible for the deaths of countless civilians, a man who executed friends and generals when he suspected betrayal, and one who grew increasingly paranoid in his later years. Whether hero or villain depends on perspective, but there is no denying the scale of his impact on history. His death remains a mystery. Some historians believe it was caused by illness, perhaps typhoid fever or malaria, while others suspect poisoning by his own generals. Modern medical theories suggest Guillain-Barré syndrome, a rare autoimmune disorder that can cause paralysis. The truth is still unknown, but his legend outlived him by centuries. From his life, powerful lessons emerge. Dream beyond limits. Alexander was just a boy from a small kingdom who believed he could rule the world. Persevere. He faced seemingly impossible odds, yet always found a way to win. Embraced new ideas. He learned from other cultures rather than destroying them, and understand that power must be tempered with responsibility. His own decline began when he let it consume him. Though he died young, his name endures more than 2,300 years later. His cities still stand: Alexandria in Egypt, Kandahar in Afghanistan, and his military tactics remain subject to study. His conquests reshaped the ancient world, and no ruler since has matched the scale and influence of his legacy. Alexander's story is more than a record of battles. It is a tale of ambition, leadership, and the boundless power of vision. If a young Macedonian could change the course of history, then great achievements remain within the reach of anyone bold enough to pursue them. Dream boldly, fight for your goals, and never give up, for history remembers those who dared be great.